again, everybody. My name is Jonny Rose, and this is Middle-Aged and Lazy. Welcome to my fourth video podcast. The first was with the well-travelled Bully Boy Carter. The second was the great Joe Kazana, who was of TV fame. The third with local sort of territory wrestler, British territory wrestler, really, the Soul Killer. And today, something a little bit different. We're going with the voice of wrestling, really, more than the in-ring version. And I love wrestling stories, and this is a man I share a lot of wrestling stories and a lot of wrestling history with over the years. My friend David Harold, how you doing, Dave?
How do? Very well. Yourself?
I'm not too bad at all. We're limited to 45 minutes, so I'm not going to muck about, and I'm going to go straight in and ask you what your very first memory of professional wrestling was.
I was at my grandparents'. It was the summer of '94. I was channel hopping. It was back when you had to get off the seat and press the button to change the channel on Sky. And I came across the Action Zone, and it was Shawn Michaels and Diesel versus Razor Ramon and 1, 2, 3 Kid. I had no idea what I was watching, but I was hooked from that moment. And I'll never forget Vince McMahon was on commentary and he was constantly saying, "What a maneuver, what a maneuver." I was hooked at that moment. I remember going to my grandparents and saying, "I don't know what this is, but I love it." And from that point onwards, I became obsessed right from then. Good times.
So it became a weekly thing then, did it?
Daily, because after school we'd go around to my grandparents. So Tuesday'd be Superstars, then it'd be Wrestling Challenge, then it'd be Action Zone, then it'd be Mania. Every single day at 5 o'clock, it was. Couldn't wait for school to end.
Yeah. Who would you say were your heroes back then? Was it the people that were in the first match, or?
Not well. I liked Razor Ramon because that character. He was just so cool. Yeah. We all go for the cool guy.
It was what all kids wanted to be, I think.
Exactly. He just. I remember going to school saying to friends who watched it at the time, "Razor Ramon, he's the man," because he was just so cool. But my hero was Bret.
Yeah.
I remember the first Bret match I saw was Bret versus Owen in the cage at SummerSlam '94.
Yeah.
And I still, to this day, think, in terms of pure emotion and storytelling, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better cage match between two people.
It was like, I'm not a Bret fan. That's very...
That's very apparent.
But that's Bret as a performer. That's Bret as a person, I think. That's like his own sort of what he's kind of brought on himself. But as a performer, I've never had an issue there. And the Bret and Owen thing was huge for me. The WrestleMania 10 and the cage and just everything was just like, even before that, a big Heart Foundation fan.
Yeah.
I think as a single in '89, he was brilliant.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to turn him sort of on his own, didn't they? Sort of '88 with the whole Bad News Brown thing.
I remember reading that in his book, and he gave that story about how he was getting more mail.
I watched that a little bit, but Bret Hart as a wrestler, always been a fan of. He's just a person I'm not keen on. No. So what was the next step from there? Was it just regular watching wrestling? Was there a point that you realised I need to get involved in this somehow?
Yeah, as years went on, I was WWF because at that time in this country, this better than most. That's all we could get. Over then, on Friday nights, Cartoon Network at 7 would become TNT, so we'd get Nitro, and that's how I stumbled across it. I was again at grandparents. I was there, and I stumbled across Nitro, and all of a sudden, I see Hulk Hogan on the screen, and I was like, "What's he doing there? He's a WWE guy." And it was at that moment I realised there was more out there. And I became unofficially like a student of history, and I just threw myself into it to the point where I'd go to like Woolworths when that was back in the day, buy any videotape I could get. Second-hand shop would be a gold mine for wrestling, especially WCW tapes, wouldn't there? There'd be a gold mine for that type of stuff. My dad would bring me videos home, and then I got to about 12 or 13, and I thought, I want to get involved, but I don't want to be a wrestler. That never crossed my mind at all. It was the creative side and the announcing side, because Howard Finkel was my hero. He blew me away. And he made every match sound big time. Whereas now the ring announcers, they all look generic, they all sound the same. Howard Finkel
Yeah.
made you believe that this was the biggest match you're ever going to see.
There's
And at that
passion
point, I
in
thought,
that voice, wasn't there?
exactly, yeah. And he never used cards. That's one thing I loved. He
Yeah.
knew everything by heart.
Regardless of who was in the ring, he just knew. You know, there
Just
could
knew.
be, you know,
Anybody.
Mario Mancini, and he still
Exactly,
knew
yeah.
the weight and the where from. And
Yeah, it was just tremendous. So that's when I knew I'm going to do that at some point. And I was lucky enough, 12, 13, 10 years later, I was doing it.
yeah. Did you know WCW existed, or?
I had no idea WCW existed until my dad brought me home a tape. And the very first WCW tape I got was Beach Blast 93.
Right.
And I recognised the Bulldog. And I recognised Rick Rude, because obviously they were WWE guys prior. But then I watched the tape, and that's when I first came across guys like Sting. And I mean, Sting was just... I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. How can you not be drawn to him?
For Blonde Sting.
Yeah, it was just unbelievable. Vader. Who else was on that card? Obviously Ric Flair. That was my first look at Ric Flair.
Yeah.
As a kid, when you're 6 and 7 and 8, I looked at Flair and thought, yeah, his matches are boring. But I look back now I'm older and I appreciate it, and I was like, oh my God, Flair could, at that time, nobody better. Absolutely incredible. So that was my first glimpse of WCW, and I was hooked because I always remember thinking the matches are longer. They're actually pounding the crap out of each other. It looked more legit, and that's
It was the wrestling promotion, wasn't it?
Exactly, and that's what got my attention, and that's when I started seeking out anything I could WCW.
And I guess, what was that, 93, you said?
So my first glimpse of WCW was in 94, 95 time, but it was the 93 Beach Blast. That was the first real introduction to WCW.
Was that the Bill Watts kind of time?
Yeah, Bill Watts. No, Watts was gone by that point. This was Bischoff was slowly coming into power, but I think Bill Shaw and what's the other guy? Was it Bob Doo?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of that conglomerate at the time, wasn't it? Before they could find anybody permanent.
So I guess for non-wrestling people to be running wrestling at the time, they did well there at that period, didn't they?
I thought, because then I got some of the older tapes, like Capital Combat 90 and Bash 91, and it was the aesthetics of it. You look at what the products looked like 2 years prior, it was that classic, dark, southern, gritty style that me and you absolutely love. And then 93 wasn't
it brightened up a bit at that point, didn't it?
Yeah, you could see the changes were there. And I remember watching that thinking, yeah, they're trying to update the product. Even as a kid, I remember thinking...
They're trying to go more global rather than they were regional.
Exactly,
like you hit the nail on the head with the dark southern look.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it was, wasn't it, before?
I mean, that southern look for me is still how wrestling should always look, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Even the WWF, you know, I watched a lot of the WWF house shows, you know, that they tape from MSG or Boston Garden and all that. And the Spectrum in Philadelphia, and they're all dark, you know, the ones that were on local TV. And I just think the atmosphere is great. I think it's almost vanity, the fact that they want to show off the crowd. When in those days, you know, in those days, you knew the crowd was there. You didn't have to see them. You knew they were there because they were loud enough. You could hear them.
Yeah, that's what I like. I've watched some NXT, and one thing I've liked when they do those big takeover shows is they dim the lights for the big matches.
Right.
And I like that. Cool.
Because the focus is on the ring, nowhere else, no one else.
Exactly.
You know, and that's how it should be, really. That's every eye should be on those, shouldn't it?
Absolutely.
So you said you wanted to get involved, and you realised at that point you knew it was for you. Yeah. How did you go about it?
I was a 1PW show, Doncaster, back in, you know, when the super shows were going on, when Gauntlet would bring over, you know, 25 imports at a time, which as a fan was great. You know, I got to meet all of my heroes.
Tracy?
Yeah, exactly. It was a friend of mine, Paul, who worked for 1PW in a variety of roles, told me that a guy called Brad Flash needed a ring announcer for a show in Swinton, where ironically I now live. And he said, "Are you up for it? I know you've wanted to do it." And I was like, "Yeah, you name the place, the time, I'll be there." So he introduced me to Brad, who at that time I thought was probably one of the most charming guys I'd ever met. Ever the carny. Got to the show in Swinton. He gave me the format and said, "This is what you do. Go do it." No instruction, which I kind of didn't expect anyway. Introduced myself because I'd been reading up on etiquette. I'd been to a Steve Carino seminar the year before, and he said, "When you get
yes,
to the
the
venue,
one upstairs in the classroom.
that one, yeah,
I did the very same. I was there.
yeah, it was fantastic." And the biggest thing I took away from that was when you get to the venue, shake everybody's hand. So I was going around the room shaking people's hand, and I'll never forget. I think it was all but 2 people looked at me as if to say, "Why are you shaking my hand?" And that's when I thought, am I missing something here? Am I being ribbed because I'm the new guy? And then it was Bubblegum, Pip, who pulled me aside and said, "Dave, nice to meet you. Well done for shaking everyone's hand." And I was like, way off my shoulders because I thought, am I doing something wrong here? And that's how I got into it. First show was a disaster on every level because the microphone didn't work until before the main event. So for the entire show, I'm ring announcing, "Making his way to the ring." I was like, oh, it was awful. My voice, was shot before the main event could even happen. But at the end of the night, I had some guys come up to me and say, "Good, well done, you did well." And I got the bug. I thought, I've got to get doing more shows. And I fell in love with it straight away. I thought, can I do this? Being the fan that I am, and how I appreciate it, can I translate to it? And having guys like Bubblegum, El Ligero, Paul Malan say you did a good job, that was enough for me. Because they were the darlings of the British scene at the time, and still are.
Yeah. Did you reach out to others then, and then other promotions?
Yeah, the guys who were filming the show for that first event put together a little highlight reel for me of my announcing, which was dire, but it was the only thing I had. And obviously, because I'm originally from Hull, I got wind that somebody in Hull was setting up a company, a guy called Doug Ingermills, NGW. I reached out to him and said, "Look, I know I've heard you setting up shows. I don't know if you know that I announce, I live local." And then he said, "I was planning to approach you anyway, to have you come on board." And that was it. About 3 months before the 3 months before the first NGW show, we were doing everything, postering, doing the online stuff, just approaching people. And that was 2008. And it was, 2008. So that's when I first started getting regular work. Because everything with like Jerry Norton, more with Brad, they all started to fall into place after that.
That's cool. So you travelled mainly in Yorkshire area, was it?
Mainly Yorkshire, and eventually, occasionally into the Derbyshire way, Cresswell, at the Cresswell Social Centre, Civic Centre, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was my favourite place to work because it held about 100 people, but every single month was sold out. You had the regular people come in, and it was amazing because the names who was on them shows: El Ligero, Bubblegum, Paul Malan, Chris Travis, God rest his soul, Danny Hope, Joey Hayes, Reigns, Scotty Hex. I mean, that was a who's who of British names at the time for that area.
And when you look at the future that a lot of those have had, it was almost like before they were famous to a degree.
Absolutely. I mean, El Ligero, especially Simon, he was just a bag of bones, not the polished product guy that we see now, for WWE.
Yeah, I remember the skinny kid in the pleather.
Yeah, that's what he was. He was wearing pleather. Him and Bubblegum were called Hubba Bubba Lucha. They came out to like a Robin Hood theme, and it was so much fun because you'd have those shows on a Friday night. The following day, Brad Flash had run a show, so it was a double header. So every month, at the end of the month, for about 4 or 5 months, it was double headers, and it was amazing. And I met you at the second Brad show when we did the Tracy Smothers thing.
Yeah, where was that? That was Swinton, was it?
That was Swinton, November 2007.
Broom Club or something?
The Bow Broom, that venue's now, it's now a McCall's supermarket.
Yeah, I remember that vividly. That was
a great
a strange kind of venue, but it was kind of a little tucked away. But it had a fire or something. I think burned down that place.
Yeah, it's 10 years ago, 9 years ago, something. And then when I came into Swinton years later and went past it and it said McCall's, I was like, oh my God, that's where I handed Tracy Smothers probably the most ineffective lifetime achievement award ever given to a wrestler.
Still means something to him, I'm sure.
Oh, it was great. I
No.
remember I got to the show and Brad said to me, right, you're handing Tracy this award. My second show as an announcer, and I'm like, what? I went to pieces before that. About half an hour, I went to pieces thinking, right, I'm going to really screw this up. And then it was Tracy himself who came over and said, let's do this, kid. Patted me on the back. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. I'm working with one of the very best here. I'm just going to follow his lead. And he led me all the way through it. There's footage of it on YouTube. I think you've seen it. The whole show was filmed.
Part 9 is the Tracy Smith. Well, early on is the award, and part 9 is the match, I think.
That award ceremony, if you can call it that, Tracy led me through that. If you watch it closely, you can see me. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And Tracy's like, you came out, you had your back and forth, and it was good. I miss those days.
Yeah. Tracy had a real good knack of making you at ease.
Oh, God, yeah.
He guides you through everything without you even know he's guiding you. He makes you think for yourself at the same time as almost getting in your head and telling you exactly what to do, but he makes it sound like it's your idea. Like it's, and that obviously comes from wrestling everybody in the world ever.
Exactly.
And the fabulous training that he must have had. I mean, he was trained by Tojo, right? So,
yeah,
that's not going to be something that's easy to do.
No,
because he would have brought him up the hard way. But
oh God, yeah.
No,
I can only imagine.
Several times tagged with him. Just a dream. Being such a Southern wrestling fan anyway. When I tagged with him, we were called the New Southern Boys.
Yes.
So for me, I was thinking, I'm Steve Armstrong.
Exactly.
I'll be a pop for that. You must have done some shows with other formers, as I call them. The former WWF, WCW, ECW kind of guys along your way. Rattle a few of those off.
I very nearly got to do a 1PW show, of all things. 1PW would come back for, I think, the third time at this point. And a friend of mine said, I might be able to get you a ring announcing job. And they had Abyss and Doug Basham, I think, booked at the time. And I was a huge Basham fan because I used to watch OVW. So I was all set for this. And then for whatever reason, at the last minute, I got a call saying, we don't need you because we heard you no-showed. I was like, what do you mean? Apparently you no-showed a show for Brad and Jerry Norton, which was absolute rhubarb. I called Jerry Norton and Brad a day, 2 days before I had laryngitis. I was struggling on the phone, and I said, what good am I to you as a ring announcer if I can't ring announce? I'm giving you 2 days' notice. I've been plying myself with meds. I've left it to the death because I thought I'd be able to make it, and I just couldn't do it. I didn't think by only giving 2 days was such a bad thing, purely for the fact that, considering the size of each company, they'd be able to find someone very quickly. Word got out, no, you've no-showed. And at that, I lost Brad bookings and Jerry. I lost 2 of my 3 regular bookings in the space of an hour.
Wow. Just from being a bit ill.
Just from being ill. But that was my first glimpse into wrestling politics, if you can call it that.
But that's the real side of wrestling, isn't it? The wrestling's the easy bit.
And it left a very bitter taste in my mouth.
You've already done the media side and the postering and that kind of stuff, which I think is a far more difficult part of wrestling than the actual wrestling.
Absolutely.
This is the real part now, when you get people shitting on you, backstabbing, and you're just a number to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It's not as family and friendly as everybody makes out, is it?
No, it was gutting. So at that point, I went from working for purely just NGW. Now, Luke at the time had all these grand plans before he'd even had 1 or 2 shows. He wanted to bring in Steve Corino, which, being the Corino mark that I was, I'm like, yes, I'll email him myself personally. Leave that to me, I'll handle that. It never happened, but not just NGW, but the companies before, a lot of the guys you see on WWE NXT UK or had a spell in TNA, came through those areas. And I'm talking about guys like Ligero and the other guys like Danny Hope and Joey Hayes. They had exposure on TNA when they did that British boot camp thing. Alex Cyanide, who became Crater, who went on to World of Sport, was NGW's first champion, and we made him into a monster for a full year. His title reign was obliterated thanks to Alex Shane, but that's a whole other question. But no, I was lucky. I did it not full time, but regularly for about a year and a half. And some of the names that I got to announce who went on to better things, I consider myself very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time.
Your knowledge of wrestling history is fabulous.
Thank you.
Where, like, you became, in your youth, you're a tape trader, right?
Oh God, yeah. Did the tape trading
for anyone that don't understand. Before YouTube and the network, you had to do a bit of legwork to watch wrestling from other areas. It wasn't as simple as just typing a few things in your phone, was it?
Christ, no. My dad would get me Power Slam magazine every single month, and at the back of the magazine there'd be a section called This and That. Fans trying to get in touch with other fans, where you'd have to write letters to people, where you'd have to take the time to write things down. And there would always be tape traders. And that is when I started getting hold of classic WCW. It was my first introduction to ECW, USWA, CWA, World Class. They had them all. And I'd go to school, senior school, secondary school. They'd all be talking about, The Rock and Triple H at WrestleMania. It was amazing. So, oh, really? Wow. I'm watching Jerry Lawler versus Kurt Hennig at Super Clash. Yeah. What? They wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about. But I'd get the magazines. This was back in the day when you go to a newsagent and you'd have Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Inside Wrestling, The Wrestler, Power Slam, all these magazines.
Yeah, I found a lot of tape traders in New Wave Wrestling.
Yes.
I had tape traders in different areas. Like I had one in Germany that sent me Otto Anthony's tapes. One in Memphis. A British guy that sent me World of Sport tapes. People in different areas, which was really cool. It was kind of after the territory sort of thing, but they still had the old tapes.
Yeah, I remember Mark Peter, who ran Strong Style Tapes. I mean, he was like a tape trader darling at one point. He was like the British equivalent to Rob Feinstein.
Yeah.
He was getting older things that you had no idea you could get hold of. I remember reading one of his lists that he'd send in the mail, and it said, the best of Memphis. I had no idea what that meant, other than I knew of the Memphis territory. So I thought, what the hell, for a $5 I'll get the tape. This was £5 for a tape, no case, no cover, just a copied tape. And you'd have guys like Jerry Lawler, Austin Idol, Bill Dundee, a very young Jeff Jarrett. I was hooked. Yeah. Absolutely hooked.
Still to this day, one of my favourite things to watch is Memphis Wrestling, no doubt.
Oh, it's amazing. The names that... What I laugh about is when years later I tried explaining to a friend, you think Vince McMahon as a heel was good now? Go back and watch his stuff when he was with Memphis in USWA. That early heel Vince McMahon stuff was absolutely outstanding.
And nobody would believe it now, because why would Vince McMahon be in essence, tin pot fucking indie show in Memphis? But it was huge. It did great crowds at the same venue every week.
I think
and the amount of views it had in one town is like nothing else for such a long period of time. No one else can claim that, surely.
I think it kept Memphis. I think it was Memphis's last great run, because it was great when you'd have like Brett coming down, Razor Ramon, Taker, Jeff Jarrett, Randy Savage was champ. I remember thinking, what the hell's going on? Have I stepped into Bizarro world here? Randy Savage is the champion right now.
It's like you've gone through the mirror to the other side, isn't it? Like you've gone Narnia.
Yeah, it was, yes, through the wardrobe. But again, it was another one of those moments when I realised, and this was about 2000, 2001. Yes, what we've got now is good, but what came beforehand was so much better, and is still so much better. I mean, I'm on to go on the internet like a lot of these keyboard warriors do and bleat and do these 10-page novels about what they thought of the show last night. But you watch the current product compared to yesteryear, it's not the same anymore. We was only saying the other night, the art form of wrestling, it seems to be, I don't want to say lost, but forgotten.
Yeah, I don't think you will ever be able to, like a wrestling fan that's only seen today's wrestling. Yeah. I don't think you'll ever be able to brainwash them to think that stuff is any better. No. Because they've got this in their mind now that is wrestling. But yeah. It's not called wrestling, is it? So to a degree, it's allowed in my head. Like this Stadium Stampede thing. Right? Yeah. I watched that, and I'm not. See, I thought I'd rant and rave about it and be mad about it, but I wasn't. I heard Jim Cornette talk about it, and I thought I've got to watch it now. Now I've heard his rant. I've got to watch it, so I did, and I couldn't be angry with it because the way I saw it was, this is today's wrestling. Yeah. This is what people have almost expect to see. Yeah. So if you don't call it wrestling, which it's not by any stretch of the imagination, it's great. It's like something out of Dukes of Hazzard or the A-Team or Knight Rider or something. Yeah, it's fabulous. But it's not wrestling. So as long as you don't call it wrestling, then I can accept it.
It seems people, the in-word at the minute is this cinematic style of wrestling. Like what they've done there, what they did with what Matt Hardy's done. But my response to that would be, go back and watch the empty arena matches years ago with Terry Funk. That was cinematic wrestling. Yes, what they've done now, they can do it more glamorous, for lack of a better term, because the production values. But if you go back 20, 30 years, cinematic wrestling's always been around. It just never got talked about.
Memphis especially, more than anywhere else, I think. You had your concession stand brawl all them years ago. The empty arena thing. Lawler getting run over. That was pretty revolutionary.
Imagine seeing that now on TV. You'd have every sponsor pulling their money from the products. You can't be running people over.
Yeah, but it was pretty standard for Memphis. It's not the fact that it's not in a ring and it's not done. That's not the issue for me. I think that stadium thing was a little too comedic for me to accept it. I'm not against. I'm not against the sheep herders hardcore style. It's the it's the fact that they're almost making fun of it. That's the only thing that offends me as a wrestler and a wrestling fan.
Absolutely, no, totally agree.
Where do you see the future of wrestling? I mean, what's next? In my head, it's gone in circles. We had the golden era, the attitude era, the people hitting each other with shit. And then it went a bit more PG, and now I'm not quite sure what we're getting. But will there be another phase? Will it go to some? What can you do that's new?
I think with All Elite Wrestling being on the scene, and they're only a year into doing what they're doing, but it's obvious the demand's there for that alternative. All Elite, if they stay on course, they're becoming what TNA should have been in 2004, 2005. I do think we'll have another big boom period. I really do, because I think once All Elite starts hitting international distribution on a high scale, when they start touring, doing live events, it'll come around again. But at the same time, considering what we see from WWE these days, it's hard to say. The attention span of a wrestling fan now is about 10 minutes.
Yeah, tops.
Back in our time, when we was watching it, and the attention, if we didn't get a 30-minute match, we'd be annoyed.
Yeah. Well, see, our attention span was the entire hour of TV.
Exactly.
And I think I remember TV doesn't help. If we had an hour a week, we'd strive and live the whole week to get back to that hour. Exactly. Where now there's so many hours of wrestling. Yeah. Raw's on for 42 hours, SmackDown's on for 84 hours. Then there's 7 pay-per-views a week. All Elite, Impact, NXT. There's no time to do anything else other than watch wrestling, which even as the most hardcore of wrestling fan, you just haven't got time in your life to do.
No. I like All Elite's pay-per-view plan where they only do so many a year. And I think WWE should follow suit in that because, back in the day, you'd have, say, Wrestle War in February, and then you'd have Great American Bash in, May, June? You'd wait all that time for the next pay-per-view. And I think...
Okay, December kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the lack of big shows and the more emphasis on telling the story week by week to build that episodic TV. I mean, I'll quickly say UWF Bill Watts, week by week, that TV, episodic wise, I don't think will ever be topped. His way, that 1 hour a week, I've gone through loads of it on the network when I had it. That's what it could get back to that, I think. But you've got to, at the risk of sounding pretentious, I think some wrestling fans need re-educating. Yeah. That's just my opinion anyway, for what it's worth.
I think the wrestling promotions could do with a more hardened wrestling-based mind rather than, script writers.
Absolutely.
Not saying don't work with them, because they're doing something right, clearly. But if they had somebody to add the wrestling parts into that drama that they're writing, I think that would be a great app. You mentioned before that you think All Elite Wrestling is doing now what Impact should have done in 2004.
Yeah.
What do you think was Impact's downfall?
I think Impact's downfall was they had all homegrown talent, and then they started relying too much on names who drew for WWE years past. And I think they thought...
like 10 years before WCW.
Yes. They fell into that trap, and I remember I watched Turning Point 2004. The entire card, with the exception of the main event, had homegrown talent, and the main event had the marquee names. Made perfect sense. You watch Turning Point several years later, every single match had a homegrown talent getting buried by Val Venus or Orlando Jordan. I mean, who? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All Elite, I think they're doing really well pushing. They've got the good blend. You've got the guys who they're putting forward, who they want to be the future. And then you've got your guys like your Jericho, your Cody, who for the moment are carrying the main scene. But no, deep down, Jericho especially, he'll put anybody over. And he'll do that going forward. If All Elite can get it right, they'll be around for years and years to come. I just hope we don't, because TNA was great at one time.
Do you think All Elite could be a threat to Vince? Because let's be honest, nobody has been for 20 odd years.
I think they could be if they have patience to do it. If they realise that it's not going to be done overnight. Like when TNA went to Monday nights, you could have every free agent on the planet. TNA were not going to beat Raw, no matter what people said. It was not going to happen. Because you've got to create the brand identity. TNA have never had that. All Elite, I think, are doing it already. They're creating an identity. And I think 10, 15, 20 years from now, that's my opinion. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But for the sake of the future of wrestling, it has to happen. Because WWE will always be around. They're always going to be there. But they need someone to stand up to them, so to speak, and say, we're the new kids on the block.
Push them a little bit.
We're coming for your crown. Bischoff did it. WCW should still be around. But we could speak for 5 hours about that on a separate chat. But no, I think All Elite can do it.
All Elite run against NXT on TV time, do they not?
Yeah, every Wednesday in America, yeah.
Do you think that's a sensible idea?
Well, from what I've been reading, with the exception of a couple of blips, they're beating NXT every week in the ratings. Some weeks quite comfortably. I mean, let's face it.
So there, if they split and went to their own time slot, that'll probably be a bollock because it'll give people more chance to watch NXT.
Yeah, I think it's one thing.
Yeah, they're doing all right as they are then.
Yeah, it's one thing to run against NXT on a Wednesday and do well. but to run unopposed will be telling in a different way. I think for All Elite to grow and keep developing, they are going to have to run unopposed. Some people might think that sounds silly, but no. I think to have nobody challenge you from a wrestling point of view on the night will determine where they go forward. Because All Elite, from what I've seen, is very good, but at the same time, well, they're only a year in, so no matter if they make any mistakes, you can give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it's just rookie errors.
Yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes left, so I reckon we often talk about old pay-per-views and things and sort of break them down, don't we, on our many late night conversations that we have. If you were to recommend during this lockdown period, let's say 3 pay-per-views that people could search out, be it on the network or Daily Motion or dig out the videotapes, what's your lockdown recommendations?
Good Lord, that's a really... right, we'll go with one that I rewatched recently. WCW Beach Blast 92. The videotape, when it came out, was only like a 2-hour video, so you didn't get the whole card. If you remember, you wouldn't get the whole show.
We lost a lot on WCW videos, didn't we?
A hell of a lot of good stuff. So if people want to watch that, go back, watch that on the network. You're going to get Rick Rude versus Ricky Steamboat in a 30-minute Iron Man match. Yeah. Don't really need to say much more to hype that one, really. Sting versus Cactus Jack, anything goes. Foley credits that as being one of the very best matches he ever had. And it was. I have never been the biggest Foley fan, purely because, like Brett, I think he drinks way too much of his own juice. But his match with Sting at that show, that was my first glimpse of Foley. Wow. Unbelievable. The main event of that, it was the Steiners versus Terry Gordy and Steve Williams. Again, 30 minutes plus. I've watched the match maybe 10 times, and I still get goosebumps watching that match, because for 30 minutes, you've got 4 guys pounding the living tar out of each other, but still telling an amazing story.
Yeah.
So that's
and on the contrast, you get the Missy Hyatt bikini match.
Yeah. The most unrevealing bikini of all time.
Yeah.
So that'd be one.
So Beach Blast 92.
Beach Blast 92. Let's throw a WWE one in there just for the sake of it. Do you know what? I'll go with SummerSlam 89. Great year for WWE. Your favourite WrestleMania from that year? One of mine.
89 in general for wrestling, I think, was fabulous.
Absolutely.
Every promotion I've ever seen from 89 is great.
They all flourished and they all started creating new guys. I mean, SummerSlam 89, Brainbusters versus Heart Foundation in the opening match. Still to this day is one of the greatest tag matches I've ever seen. And it was non-title, which shows you how much the tag division meant back in the day compared to what it is now. Warrior versus Rick Rude, again, proof that Rick Rude could make Warrior look like the greatest wrestler on the planet.
And they wrestled each 1,000 times, and I think that's one of the better ones.
Absolutely. That match, I think, is the best one they had. And for spectacle, the main event, you had Hogan and Beefcake versus Zeus and Savage. Was never going to be the best wrestling match, but for a spectacle, WWE was untouchable. Nobody did it better.
Yeah.
So SummerSlam 89.
Film really well. You know, they did exactly what they wanted to, or exactly what they needed to.
Exactly. I'll throw that one in. And another one on the network. Let's have a look. Third one. Do you know what? I'll go with another WCW one here. I'll go with Starrcade 93.
93.
It was, you could see the Bischoff influence really coming into play, but you could sense the grittiness was still there. You had Flair versus Vader on top.
Yeah.
Great.
We spoke about this recently, didn't we? About the that's exactly what we said. I remember talking to you about this when I was watching it.
Absolutely phenomenal. You had, what did you have underneath? The Boss versus Rick Rude, the big boss man, you know, before WCW got sent a lawsuit. He can't be called the Boss, change his outfit, blah, blah, blah.
He looked
Dustin
just. It was just the same as the Boss Man in a darker shirt.
Yeah, Jesse Ventura would still call him, the Boss Man on TV. There's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Dustin Rhodes versus Steve Austin, 2 out of 3 falls.
Fabulous.
Anyone will know me. Dustin Rhodes, for me, other than Barry Windham, is my favourite wrestler of all time.
Dustin Austin from Halloween Havoc 91 is my favourite.
Tremendous. Yes, did Time Limit Draw, was that right? Or did Austin... Yeah.
Time Limit.
Great. They had great chemistry. It's just a shame they never had... When they were both in WWE, it's a shame they didn't have a good run together then. But I think Austin's knees were shot
I don't think it would have quite been the same with a Goldust.
No. It's a shame. Because I like
it
the
was
Goldust
serious
character.
wrestling in WCW.
Yeah.
You know, the natural and this stunning Steve guy were totally contrasts, you know.
Absolutely.
Where much as Austin and, you know, Stone Cold and Goldust would have been opposites, it was almost, you know, too comedic to be a serious wrestling match, regardless of Dustin's talent.
Definitely. So, I could list 30 of them, but they're just 3 that come to mind. So if anyone's watching this and they've never seen any of those...
Certainly help you through the lockdown, they will.
I mean, if they want to watch WCW, anything from 87 to 94, you can watch anything from that era and you're going to find something good.
That's exactly what I'm doing currently, to be fair.
I
love every second of it. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Dave.
Same.
Absolute pleasure.
Absolutely.
Really enjoyed it. We'll book in another one because we could talk wrestling for hours, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to do another.
Enjoy whatever you do. What are you doing with yourself now? Well, we've got a couple of seconds left.
Not much. I had plans. Some people know this. There was plans to release a book on the history of NWA Wildside.
Yeah.
And that's fallen through for reasons I can't really go into here. But I'm devastated because I spent 2 years putting this thing together. But I'm still going to try and do something with it because it was a project I got really excited about. I got a lot of response from NWA Wildside alumni, Bill Berens, owner of the company and all that. So I'm still going to work on that. But other than waiting to return to work, I'm just ploughing through classic WCW. It's one of the few things keeping me sane.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Dave. Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure.
And very soon.
Indeed. Bye-bye.
For those at home, join us on Tuesday when I've got Mad Dog Max, my long-time travel buddy. He's going to be here. So see you then. Thank you.